Thank you very much, Ma'am Rhea, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, and salamat tingahari to our Malaysian viewers. My name is Paul Jason Perez, and I will be talking about getting data from the web or web scraping with Python. When I was doing my research for my master's, I had the enormous task of gathering data, and the data that I was looking for was available on a government website. The data that I needed is text data, and unfortunately, there's no way for me to collect the data unless I copy it manually and then paste it in a spreadsheet, and that would have taken me forever. Fortunately, I was introduced to automated tools by one of my professors. Her name is Kelly Toll. So she taught me how to use codes or scripts to perform web scraping. And that helped me finish my research, which eventually helped me finish my degree. So I'm here today because I want to share with you what web scraping is. And web scraping isn't really something that is new. In fact, in 1993, an MIT researcher named Matthew Gray developed the first software or bot to gather data from the web. And what he wanted to do was he was trying to measure the growth of the web. And he was able to do that by writing a piece of software that copies details from all of the available websites. So, web scraping has been done for more than 20 years, and also search engines such as Google are they're doing it. But what is different now from 25 years ago is that we now have more tools. Whether you're a programmer or not, there are tools that you can use to scrape data off the web. And also, the amount of data that is available or the digital footprint available on the web is so vast. And this is something that we should take advantage of as information professionals. So, what I hope that you will learn by the end of this presentation are first, I want you to have an understanding of what web scraping is, when you can do web scraping, or when you should do web scraping, and also to see who are the ones using web scraping. But most of this presentation will be focused on how to do web scraping. So I want you to have an idea of how you can actually do it. And then finally, I want you to think about the important questions when doing web scraping. Is it legal? Is it ethical to do? And as information professionals, what can we do to take advantage of this technology? Okay, so Wikipedia defines web scraping as the act of copying data from the web, but using automated tools. So if you are manually copying text or pictures or tables from websites and then pasting it to a spreadsheet or a Word document, imagine doing it in an automated fashion, and that is web scraping. There are a lot of terms that are being used synonymously with web scraping, such as web harvesting, data scraping, web extraction. All of this pertains to the automated way, whether you're using proprietary software or you're using a piece of code to copy data or information from the web. And I guess the first question is, when can or should you do web scraping? What are the things that you need to consider before you even begin to do web scraping? Well, the first one is, does the website allow it? The website where you see the data that you need, do they allow you to scrape their data? Well, in order for you to find out, what you need to do is to look for the robots robots.txt. So the robots.txt is a file available in the server of these websites. And in order for you to look at it, what you can do is to go to Google and then type in the website followed by robots.txt. For example, this is the robots.txt for eBay. And as you can see here, it says in the text file that the use of robots or other automated means to access the eBay site without the express permission of eBay is strictly prohibited. They further stated that any other use of robots or failure to obey the robots exclusion standard set forth at this link is strictly prohibited. Although eBay allows you to copy or scrape some of its data that are available publicly, there are some limitations. That is the same with Wikipedia, for example. So if you look at the robots.txt for Wikipedia, it states here that please note there are a lot of pages on this site, and there are some misbehaved spiders out there that go way too fast. Basically, what Wikipedia is saying that yes, you may copy the information or the data available from our website, but you have to do it in a respectful manner. So we'll discuss more about that later. The second question that we need to ask is there an API that is available? An API is an application programming interface, and you can think of this as a set of rules that users or robots that they need to follow so that they will be allowed to interact with the data being held in those websites. So these are commonly available from social media sites such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let's say you wanted to scrape all of the tweets of Donald Trump. In order for you to do that, you need to use the Twitter API so that you can download all of his tweets. You are not allowed to write a piece of software or a code to scrape all of those data, and it depends on the amount of data that you need. As a free user or as a under the free account or a free tier, you can only download a certain amount of tweets or hashtag. But if you're a premium user or if you're a business entity and you're paying for a service, then you may download more. So that is one way or a revenue for these social media giants. And then finally, you also have to ask, is it feasible? Is this something that you can do? Because there are some websites or web pages out there that are badly written. Like, as you can see here, this is like web page, a relic of the past. It used to be that web pages were written badly. There were no structure, and developing a code might not be worth your time. So you need to think if it is something that is economical to do in terms of your time and effort. Nevertheless, when you found websites, especially government websites that are rich in data and have well formed HTML, then web scraping can be a powerful tool at your disposal. And nowadays, um, people from the journalism industry are using web scraping to do data journalism. So, web scraping is one of their tools to report about the government spending or monitor the COVID cases. So, data scraping or web scraping is very popular, especially among the journalists. When you have decided that web scraping is what's needed for you to gather your data, I recommend that you follow these steps. First, you have to analyze the web page. This involves looking at the HTML structure to see what data can be extracted. Then next you have to strategize. You need to decide whether you're going to code the scraper yourself or you're going to use automated tools. And then finally, you have to implement it. During this step, you need to consider where you're going to store your data and in what format. Let us start by looking at a simple web page involving cats. This is a simple website that has a title My Cats. On the top portion, you can see that there is a banner and it says Meet My Cats. They're all cute but a little naughty sometimes. And if I scroll down, you can see that there are what we call cards. Each card contains pictures, names, and descriptions of the cats. And there's also a button that will lead us to more details about the cat. So I can see here a bigger picture and a table containing the name, the age, and the weight. So this structure of a web page or website is commonly known as the list and detail views. So the list view is where you can see all of the records available, while the details view will give you more information about that record. This is commonly used among e-commerce websites. But to really understand how the HTML is arranged, what we can do is to inspect the element. What I'm using is Mozilla Firefox, but if you're using Google Chrome, you can do something that is also similar. Just right click on the browser and then look for something that says inspect or inspect element. If I click on that one, it will show up at the window that has the codes for my HTML page. So an HTML is really just a hierarchical document made up of elements and tags. At the topmost level, you can see that our HTML document is made up of two elements, the head and the body. Inside the head are the metadata, the title, the link, and other information about the web page that we don't normally see when we're looking at the browser. The things that we see are commonly found inside the body. And if I expand this tag, you can see that currently there are two elements. Both of them are using the div tags. The first element contains the banner that has a heading tag and a paragraph tag, while the second element is a container that has all the rows and the columns and the card until I get to the picture, the name, and the description. So as you can see, the arrangement of our HTML document is really hierarchical. Each node can have a child, those child can have siblings, and the innermost part is the content, and in this case, it is a text. If you also look at the details page, you can see that it is almost similar to the list view. At the body level, there are two elements, the Jumbotron class and the container class. And inside the container, there are also two elements, the image of the cat and a table. So inside the table, inside the table there is a body, and inside that body there are three rows. The rows are the ones containing the header and the data. So that is how we analyze the structure of our HTML page. It is important that we have a fundamental understanding of how HTML documents are arranged so that we can effectively extract data from it. Now that we have seen and analyzed the structure of the HTML, we can now decide on what tools to employ. And although the website that you've seen is quite simplistic, this is actually a good starting point for you to be able to write codes for bigger and more complex websites. The data that we'll be looking at are the following: the name, the description, the picture, the age, and the weight. So let us now start writing some code. The tool that I'm using is called Google Colab Research. This is a cloud based Jupyter notebook that allows you to type in or to code Python easily. So, the first step that we need is to get the required packages or libraries that will help us do the web scraping. So, let me do that. Okay, so what I just did is I imported the request library, which is a built-in Python library, and the beautiful soup library, which is an open source and free library developed for parsing or web scraping HTML documents. The next step is that I need to get the actual HTML page. So let me also do that. So what happened here is that I declared a variable called HTML, and then I assigned the value that will be returned by this method request.get. So what's happening here really is that we are sending an HTTP request to this URL, which is our test website, the CATS website, and whatever the response from that website will be stored and saved in HTML. So as you can see, when I printed the value of HTML, it is a response of 200, which in HTML means a successful response from the server. So we can now actually look at what's inside this HTML variable or HTML object. If I print out the text, you can see that this is actually the web page that we analyzed earlier. However, this is a mess. Actually, this is a string or a soup of characters, and this is very difficult to extract data from. That is why we need the beautiful soup library to transform this mess of a soup into a beautiful soup. So in order for me to do that, I need to declare something, a variable that will uh, hold the value for the transformed HTML text. So let me just do that. I mean soup, not soap. But it doesn't matter because it's just the name of the variable. Okay, so as you can see here, there is now a difference. This soup is more organized compared to the HTML text we had earlier. And if I look at what the data type is, so if I type in or if I use the built-in function type and check the type of HTML.text, it tells me that it is of type string. But if I check the type of the soup, it is a beautiful soup object. And what this means is that we can now traverse or navigate this soup object. For example, if I type in soup dot body, I can access the body portion of the HTML. Similarly, if I type in soup dot body dot div, it will give me the first div tag or the first div element that it encounters. If you can remember earlier when we are analyzing the website, we saw that there is a division with a class Jumbotron that has the banner that says "Meet my cats." They are all cute but a little naughty sometimes. I can also try to access the P tag. Beautiful Soup has now allowed us to navigate the HTML document to extract a specific element that we need. There are other functions available in Beautiful Soup that can make data extraction systematic, so let's get back to it. One function that can help us look for a specific data is the find function. So let's try this. If you remember earlier, when we are looking or examining the cat website, all of the important details that we need can be found inside the div element that has a class of card. So what happened here is that I declared a variable and I name it as card, and I get the value, or I look for the div element that has a function or has a class of card. And I was able to do that by using the find function. And with this, I can now access, for example, the image along with its source attribute. So that is the picture file or the link to the picture. I can also access the name by looking at this HTML code. I can see that the name is inside the H5 header. So I can type this. And then if I want the description, that is inside the p tag. So I can access it via card.p.text. And then finally, in order for us to get to the details page where the age and the weight are, we need to get the link in the anchor tag. And we can do that by accessing the card.anchor tag and then accessing the href or the hypertext reference. There you go. So at this point, we were able to extract an individual, uh, in an individual level, the different data that we need for a cat. But what we really need is to extract all of the details for all of the cats. So there is another function called find all that we will be using. So let me do that. Okay, so what happened here is that I declared a variable called cards and I used the built-in function find all to look for all the div tags that has a class of card. And what I got in return, or what I get in return, is a list, or what you can also call as an array of objects. This is the first card. All of the cards are separated by a comma. So this one is Sam, this one's Jacob, this one's Bubbles, this one's Dexter, and so on and so forth. But our main objective is really to extract the data. So for us to be able to do that, we need to declare a container where we'll be putting those data. So let me declare some collections or collections of variables. Okay, so what I did here is that I declared some empty variables. These are called empty list, where we'll be putting the details later. So now what I need to do is to go through this list of cards and then extract the needed data and then save it to these empty variables. And I can easily do that with a for loop. So let me just do that. So if you can remember a while ago, in order for me to extract those information, I am accessing the HTML tags and elements. And in order for me to extract the name, I need to access card.h5.text. For the description, it's card.p.text. And that is what I'm doing here. For the pictures, I need to access the image, and I need to access the attribute, the source attribute of the image tag. And finally, for the links details, I need to access the anchor tag of the card, specifically the hypertext reference attribute. So if I run this for loop and check the variables, it should now have the data that I'm looking for. So we have the names, the descriptions, the pictures, and then finally the links that will lead us to the age and the weight. At this point, we have extracted most of the data that we need. And you may want to consider how you're going to store this data. And in Python, there are built in libraries that you can use, such as the CSV package, to assist you in saving and storing your data into a CSV file. Let's try that. To save my data to a CSV file, I need to import the CSV package first. Then after that, what I need to do is to create a CSV file that I can write my data to. So let me just type that in. Notice that when you're using Jupyter Notebook, there are some suggestions that you can, or auto suggestions. It's very helpful whenever you don't memorize the actual code, because it's impossible for you to memorize all of these codes. So what's happening here is that I declared some variables that will be the pointers to the file that we created. Specifically in this line, uh, we opened a CSV file called mycatsdata.csv with the write mode enabled. So what I need to do first is to write some header. So I can do that by typing in CSV writer dot write row. Uh, the first column can be the name, followed by the description, then the picture, and then for now the links. Now that we've written the header, what I need to do now is to iterate through these different variables and then save it or write it to my CSV file. And again, I can do that with a for loop. I have to make sure that I'm writing the corresponding variable to the header. So the first column is a name, so it should also be a name, followed by a description, followed by a picture, and then followed by the links details. And then lastly, we need to close the file. So that is csv file dot close to indicate that we are now saving the CSV file and we are done with writing. Okay, so let us check the folder, and as you can see here, there is a mycatsdata.csv. If I click on this one, it is showing that I was able to extract the data that I need and saved it into a text file or a CSV file. So currently there are 10 rows because the first row is the header, followed by 9 rows of cat information. Okay, so at this point, you now have seen how we can extract data and save it into a CSV file. There are, of course, other tools out there that we can install or add as an extension to your browser to scrape websites. But honestly, I would prefer to write my own code because it gives me more flexibility. And if you try these other software, you actually have to uh, look at their tutorial to use it. It's not that user friendly. And also, some of these services you have to sign up and pay for premium services. You may have noticed that we have not extracted all of the data that we need for our cats. We forgot to extract the age and the weight. I leave that to you as an exercise so that you can practice scraping websites. If you want to continue writing the code, you can access it by going to bit.ly/scraping cats or by scanning this QR code. You can also visit the CAT website for practice. That is through bit.ly/scraping cats website. The basics that you have seen earlier will be your foundation if you want to scrape more complex websites. Like, for example, let's take a look at the Philippine E portal or the Philippine Freedom of Information portal. Information portal or the EFOI portal is a website where citizens of the Philippines can submit their FOI request, and these are open to the public so that they can look at the request and monitor the status. And we can also view the requests being submitted to specific government agencies. And currently, there are now 41,433 requests, or for I hope that you gained some ideas on how to do web scraping. Now, let's ask the important questions. Is web scraping legal? I am not a lawyer, but according to the Global Investigative Journalism Center, it is legal to do web scraping, and it is actually a normal activity being done, especially by journalists, on a day to day basis. However, there may be some instances wherein the actual act of copying the data may lead or may be interpreted as breaking the law. For example, in the Philippines, we have the Republic Act 10175, or the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, and in Section 4, they defined system interference as the intentional alteration or reckless hindering or interference with computer networks or computer systems without the right or authority. So, for example, if you're trying to scrape a government website, a government server, and you're trying to send a lot of requests, it may lead to an overwhelming of the traffic of the server, and it may lead to the servers to shut down. So that can be interpreted as an attack, specifically a DDoS, or a distributed denial of service attack. Now, even if you are legally allowed to do it, the main question now is it ethical for you to do so? Luckily, the Data Journalism Handbook provided some general guidelines that we can follow, or questions that we can ask whenever you are performing web scraping. The first one would be identifying yourself or your purpose, why you want to copy that data. In journalism, it is a common practice to identify yourself as member of the media when you're asking for data. And when you are web scraping, you can do it anonymously by masking your IP address. So the ethical way to do it is for you to identify your name and your intent through the headers that you are sending to your websites, or to the websites you're requesting from. The second question that we should consider is the data for public consumption? The rule of thumb is that if the data is published by the government, then it is intended for public consumption. However, there may be some instances wherein that throughout you analyzing the web pages of government websites, you found out that there are some hidden data that is normally not viewable by an ordinary citizen. Then the ethical thing to do is not to copy those data, even if you can access it through scraping. And then finally, and more importantly, you need to ask the question, are you taking something away from the owners or the original creators of the data? This is can be something like traffic or revenue. Are you repackaging the data that you copied to a better presentation so that you can take away the traffic from your competitor, for example? This is a hotly debated issue. If you have noticed, for example, whenever you're doing a Google search, there are what we call featured snippets, wherein you don't have to actually visit the website because you can see the content right away at the Google search or the Google homepage. This has been debated in various blogs and in Twitter, and is still an ongoing debate because this may lower down the traffic or the people visiting those website that produce those original content. So, as information professionals, we can take advantage of web scraping by doing these two activities. The obvious one is, of course, using web scraping for research. We can use web scraping whenever we want to investigate the digital landscape, and it is a very powerful tool. But something that we can also do is to offer it as a service to our clients. We can teach them or develop the scraper. We can teach them how to do it, or we can also develop the scraper for them when they're looking for data. The important thing is that we inform our clients, our patrons, that web scraping is an option whenever they're looking for data and information. Okay, so I hope that you learned something from this session, and I thank you so much for listening through this short lecture. I know that I have not covered everything about web scraping, but if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me via Twitter or send me an email, and I'm open to collaborations or projects that involves web scraping. Thank you very much, and have a great day.